Yes, hello everyone and welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today. This is a webinar for Next AI 2020 application for international applicants. And my name is Veronica and I'm a program officer here in Toronto. And so that you know that this webinar is recorded and we will be sharing it with all the attendees. And let's take a look at our agenda for today. We'll start with welcome and introductions. I have my lovely colleagues here, as well as our panelists, alumni who will be joining me today and share their story and help answer any of your questions. Then I will be going briefly through the program overview, eligibility criteria, but I do want to focus more on the startup visa process today. And the alumni panel discussion, we will be talking about things to do and the things that you should be considering when it comes to before applying, while you're applying and before you are accepted, what to do after you're accepted and before you arrive here in Toronto, and what to expect when you arrive in Canada. And we'll have a Q&A session at the end of it. So we'll have 10 to 15 minutes, but feel free to ask any questions during the session. There's a Q&A button on the bottom, and we will try to answer as many of them as possible live. And also, we'll try to answer as many of them in live, but then if at some point we're not going to be able to get to all of them, I will be sending a follow-up email and you can address it. We will address it with you in person. Okay, so let's start with the panelists. So I'm very fortunate to have Sandesh and Andrei today with me. And Andrei is originally from Ukraine and Sandesh is from India. So I was hoping if you guys could take a minute or so to introduce yourself and tell us what you're working on. That'd be really great. Starting with Sandesh.
Thanks, Veronica, for having me here. My name is Sandesh Suvarna, and I'm the co-founder of 45 Labs. We build AI-driven tools for content creators. And currently, I'm in the panelists today because for me, I shifted my base from India to here in this March 2019. So it's been almost 7 to 8 months here in Toronto, and I'll be excited to answer your queries.
And Andrei?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me today. I'm Andrei, co-founder and chief technology officer of Tryon. At Tryon, we create augmented reality technology for virtual jewelry fitting, so customers can try on rings, bracelets, and watches anytime and anywhere with their smartphone. So we enhance customer shopping experience online and help companies sell more jewelry.
Excellent, thank you so much. And I am a program officer here in Toronto, and yes, I see a question if the startup visa process is specifically for Toronto. However, Montreal team will assist. If you are thinking of applying to Montreal, you can reach out directly to the team in Montreal, and I'll be mentioning some information about it at the end of this webinar. So our mission, Next Canada is a not-for-profit organization, and the mission that you see right now on the screen is very powerful. We've been around since 2010, and for the past 10 years or so, we've accelerated the trajectory of more than 500 promising entrepreneurs, and then we've generated over $319 million in economic impact and created over 1,500 jobs. And the way we do it is by delivering this great cutting-edge programs like Next 36, which is for students and recent graduates launching their startups, Next Founders for founders of high-growth ventures looking to scale, and Next AI for early-stage AI-enabled ventures. So today, I really wanted to focus more on the Next AI, and specifically because for international applicants, because this is the first time we're doing this, and it is a pretty complicated process. And I'm working really closely with all the participants from the application process all the way through the startup visa process. And we're here today with Andrei and Sandesh to share with you what it's like and what this journey looks like. So this is an overview of what the program is offering. It is delivered in 2 cities, in Toronto and Montreal. And today I really wanted to not just read through the website, because I'm pretty sure you guys can read very well, but really zoom into the startup visa support. Startup visa program is offered in Toronto. And on our website, there's a lot of information that you can look into. The frequently asked section can explain how the funding works. You can check out our award-winning faculty and the great network that we have, including scientists and residents and mentors. So all of this information is available on the website. And like I said, Montreal team, it will offer assistance through a different program, and make sure you check Montreal specific FAQ section in that regard on the website, and reach out to the team directly as soon as possible, and they will walk you through the process. And we will also be hosting a webinar on December 2nd that will be talking a little bit more about the application process and the program in further details. But I'd say right now, let's jump into this whole startup visa business. Okay, so quickly on who we're looking for. So ideal candidate is an idea or early stage ventures that are passionate about solving global problems by leveraging the power of AI. And we are looking for exceptional teams, and in the ideal case scenario, that would be a team that has a minimum 1 business and 1 technical co-founder with combined strong backgrounds in relevant business and technical fields, deep domain expertise in the industry that you're launching your venture in, and relevant work, research, and entrepreneurial experiences. So I would say if you hit all of these 4 eligibility criteria and these 4 points, you are in a pretty good position. And the idea, and one thing that I would mention when it comes to international applicants is that you're much better positioned if you're past the ideation stage, if you have a prototype or something a little bit more tangible, and if you have a team that's been working together, have a history of working together. The bar is slightly higher for international applicants because we do invest a little bit more resources into startup visa process. So I just think that this is something that you should be aware of. Okay, so the startup visa program is although it does have a word visa in it, it is a permanent residence program. So you're essentially applying to stay here in Canada permanently. It's a truly life-changing opportunity. So therefore, the process is pretty in-depth. Next Canada is a designated entity, and this program is offered in essentially all provinces except for Quebec. And in the past 2 years that we have provided the supports, we have supported 11 teams, 19 individuals, and from Ukraine, like Andrei, from India, like Sandesh, Pakistan, South Korea, the United Kingdom, US, Iran, and Taiwan. And out of all 19 individuals, we have 1 rejection, which I will comment on that in a few minutes. And we have 1 team that is still in process, so the decision hasn't been made. But other than that, everybody else successfully landed here and presiding permanently in Canada. So again, this is an overview of eligibility criteria when it comes to the ventures and the businesses that you are applying with to NextAI. So one of the hardest things on top of this is, of course, to get accepted into the program because it is fairly competitive. And then on top of that, in order to qualify for startup visa, you have to make sure that there are a few things that I underline that I think sometimes it's a bit hard for people to get. And so no more than 5 essential persons per business proposal. So essentially you can't have up to 5 people, up to 5 co-founders. We did not have groups of 5. The biggest group that we brought over was with 3 co-founders. And something to think about is that more people on the co-founding team doesn't necessarily mean a better application. And also the essential person, this is a term that is used by the government. So that it's a foreign national considered by the Next Canada as essential person to the business. So in the application form that we have to submit in the commitment certificate, we really have to justify why that person is highly important to the business. And very important to consider is that if one of the co-founders of one of the essential people are rejected or decide to withdraw or decide to leave the venture, then the entire application is rejected. So this is something that people are not aware of. And this is the one rejection that we had, where a co-founder decided to leave the venture in the middle of the process. And because they were considered as essential people, the entire application was denied. So no question asked, it just happens pretty much automatically. And another thing I wanted to clarify is the 10% or more. So applicant must hold 10% or more of the voting rights. And this is also an eligibility criteria for the program in general. And combined, international applicants should hold more than 50%. So I'll give you an example. So if you are a Canadian who are looking to partner up with someone who would go through the startup visa process, that person will have to hold more than 50% in order to qualify for startup visa support. And if you have a team of 3 people, and I think, Sandesh, in your case, I believe this is what happens between you and your co-founder, where you were the one who were going through startup visa, and then we had to restructure organization where you had to be the majority stakeholder, correct?
Right. Correct.
Yes. Thank you. So, and if you have 3 founders, for instance, so, and one is Canadian, so the 2 founders that go through the startup visa combined have to have more than 50%. All right. And now eligibility for individuals. So intend to reside in a province territory other than Quebec. And 2 things that I highlighted here is the language proficiency threshold and sufficient funds, because those are the 2 things that, you know, takes time to sometimes to collect, and sometimes, you know, you can speak English really well, but it's really a matter of booking the test, waiting for results, then receiving the results. So you have to plan ahead for things like that. The sufficient fund, I think I will also leave it to Andre and Sandesh to comment. There is on the website, depending on the household. So if you're 1 person or if you have dependents, you have to show and prove the minimum amount of funds available for you to settle here. So those are the things that are typically big barriers and do take some time. And the program timeline. So we are accepting applications right now, and January 6th is the application deadline. By mid-January, we will be contacting people and inviting them to the interview. So if you don't hear back from us at this point, if you're not invited to the January 19 and 30 interviews, then I would say it's safe to, you know, to think that you were not selected for this year. So keep going at your venture and try again next year. So mid-February, so I think this is when it starts getting real. So this is when you will find out if you're selected and invited to get to join the cohort. And that is the time when the certificate of commitment and the letter of support is issued by Next Canada, and the entire application package for permanent residence and temporary work permit are prepared and submitted. So it has to happen really fast. So that's why I can't stress enough how important it is to collect all of the supporting documentation ahead of time. I think Sandesh came here probably like one of the fastest work permit processed, but he also did a great job. As soon as he was accepted, he sent me a Google link with all of the supporting documentation properly organized. So that was extremely helpful. Program started March 24th with Immersion Week, which is a kickoff week. And that's the ideal arrival for applicants to be here in Toronto, but we also know there are certain things we cannot control. So we will be working with you. This is the time when you and I will become really good friends. So there's a lot of communications happening, and we will try our best with our lawyers to make sure you're here at the latest at the end of April. So permanent residence review process takes 12 to 16 months. So, and from the moment your complete application is received by the government. So that's why you will be coming in here and start working on your venture on the work permit, right? So this is to help us expedite your arrival in the country while your permanent residence application is being reviewed. All right, and I think a few other things that I just wanted to touch base on is the role. So what is Next Canada doing in this entire process, the immigration lawyer, and what is expected from the applicant. So Next Canada will cover legal costs. We will connect you with our immigration lawyer. We'll cover the cost for the principal applicant, meeting for the co-founder. So that's the biggest chunk of the fees, essentially. If you have dependents, if you have spouse or kids, you will have to cover it yourself. And we will prepare and issue certificate of commitment and letter of support. This is something that I will personally be doing, working on with you on submitting that. And we will assist with incorporation and legal structure as well if needed. It will be provided free of charge. We will cover the incorporation and legal, the fees for the lawyers will provide it pro bono, but you will have to pay for the incorporation fees. So, and we will be assisting you with administration, facilitate communication between you, lawyer, and the government. And we are in this together, the entire process. So sometimes the government will be asking us for supporting documentation in regard of your case. So it's going to be a very collaborative process. Immigration lawyer will prepare and submit work permit if needed and the permanent resident application on behalf of the applicant. So they will be dealing with the government and they will handle all the communication. So as well as provide legal advice, guidance, and assistance throughout the entire process. So, and finally, the applicant. So what is expected is to collect the supporting documentation ahead of time. So bank statements, sometimes you'll have to translate and notarize them. So that takes a couple of weeks. The police certificates, depending on the country that you're from, and also the time varies. The English test, like I mentioned, and medical examination. So you should be aware of all of this and really be familiar with the process from the government website. That is a source of truth for everyone. And, you know, and as well as really do the research as much as possible. Another thing is I wanted to highlight, because we did have an experience, a few delays, providing truthful, accurate information to the immigration lawyer in our office is very important, because sometimes if there's a discrepancy in your LinkedIn profile or in your work history, we might get questioned. So it's very important to provide it accurate and timely and truthful information about the background. So like I said, so you will be, applicants are paying permanent residence application fee and work permit application fee and any extra legal fees for dependents and out of scope work in case there are delays and complications. We haven't had a case last year that there was out of scope, but because we didn't have dependents in 2019. So everyone, pretty much all the, just for the context, all the legal fees were covered by us. So no one had to pay anything out of pocket. We'll have to pay for incorporation fees to be incorporated, but we will provide legal assistance pro bono. And one thing, again, I would like to stress is to familiarize yourself with the process as much as possible. So this is essentially everything that I wanted to cover up until this point, and I think it's time.
Sorry to interrupt. Can you go back to one slide before? Yeah. So on the point number 2, I just want to add on that I had a like, keep your names same everywhere, like even on your social media and anywhere online and online display, keep your name same how exactly it is there on the passport, because I had one surname added onto the name, and that was the question the immigration officers had asked. So this is just a suggestion.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. And I also got a question from Vivek. Can we apply if we aren't incorporated yet? Yes. So you don't have to be, it's not mandatory to be incorporated. We will start working on it as soon as you are accepted into the cohort. And it's totally fine if it's not, but you have to intend to have the structure of this whole 51% or more. So we'll have to make sure that it is properly structured, but there's no need to. Okay, so how about we're gonna get started with the panelists. And so if I take you back, so Andrei, for you, it was about 2 years ago, and for Sandesh, it was about a year ago or even earlier. So tell us about how did you decide to apply to the program and why did you decide on coming here in Canada, in Toronto?
So my co-founder Natalia and I have been working in IT startups for around 10 years. And in one moment, we understood that we have enough experience to start our own startup. We've been researching a little bit different countries, but we came out with the mission to go to the Canada because a few reasons. First of all, this is, in our opinion, the best place to start AI startup. Also, there is an XTI, the accelerator that focused on AI startups. By reviewing the information on the website, we understood that there is a good expertise can be provided to help us to grow. And yeah, mostly because of the focus on AI and the ecosystem here.
Excellent. And for you, Sandesh?
So many things. So first of all, I had heard so many good feedback about Next. So that is one of the things. And the second thing is that we are working on NLP, natural language processing, and we wanted to target English audience, and we wanted some expertise and some mentoring on the AI side. And Next Canada had such a nice lineup of mentors, even on the business side and even on the AI side, people who can understand AI. That's what we needed, and that's the second thing. And the third thing is that Next has pretty good terms on the investment side as well. You won't get it anywhere else. The terms are really good. That's the third thing. And I think that's it. Did I make it? Yeah, and resource availability. Currently, there are huge number of resources available in Toronto because of the PR stuff. Like I think there's a work visa express entry option available, and because of that, there are huge resource availability here. So these are the four things which we consider before applying to Next.
Excellent. And so what would you recommend applicants to do right now to prepare themselves better for the entire journey ahead?
And for me, or for me or Henry?
Both of you.
Both. Okay. So let me take this. Nothing. I think I don't. Just go with just look into the prerequisites which you have to fulfill before applying to the visa, because that's a biggest chunk, I would say, because you have to work on your startup on the first side, and working on your startup, then you have to write your IELTS exam, and also you have to do police verification.
Yes, and sorry, and I know that there is also a question about if applicants are required to complete the English test before getting accepted. The answer is yes.
Okay. So these are the things which I felt sidelined my time building a startup, but this is necessary. Mm-hmm. So you have to go through all of this stuff parallelly before applying to the Next. Yeah.
Okay. So Andre, how about you? So what would you recommend to applicants?
So in our case, fortunately, we had English test exam and result, so it helped us a lot during the application process. And yeah, the same, working on the documents, thinking one step further, preparing the documents. Mm-hmm. It's very important.
Okay. So any challenges you guys wanted to highlight that you had to overcome during the application?
For me, no.
It was easy. Okay. So
yeah, you're running a startup. You can't complain on application process.
Thanks. Okay, good point. So one thing I wanted to highlight, and feel free to comment on that. I know we've mentioned about the minimum amount of funds that is required to come in, and I think that financial planning is extremely important, and that's something that I've also seen people struggling coming in here. Is that yes, like for example, if you're one person coming in here, you don't have dependents. I believe the requirement is around $25,000. But the thing is, I don't necessarily think that that's all that it takes, right? Because there are quite a lot of things. You have to buy the tickets, you have to come here, you have to find a place to live, and sometimes you have to pay upfront, right, for a few months because you don't have any history here. So things about that, as well as medical emergencies. So there's all these things that can happen. It's just like it's very important to be ready for it, right? Because it's a stressful process, and you don't want to add extra stress with the financial, if you don't plan for financial ahead of time.
True. Just to add on, I think there may be it's better to keep aside funds on your bank for at least 3 months, because the authorities, the immigration officers may check for last 3 months statement.
Yes.
So it's better to keep it now, like it's like November, December. I think by the time you apply, it will be on time.
Excellent. Okay. And the market research, I will just say in that, and also I'm an immigrant myself. I came here through a different process, so I can definitely relate to a lot of, you. But the market research in terms of the program itself, the government website, our website, the Next Canada, like looking into who've been through this process and reaching out to them and asking what it was like for them, being on blogs, because to me it was very important to familiarize yourself with the process. Yes, you will be working with a lawyer, but at the same time you're much better prepared if you know what to expect and what's happening before it happens. Okay, so now after you're accepted and before you arrive here, I think this is when a lot of things are happening. So, and I wanted to ask you what it was like for you, and was there anything that you could have done better to prepare yourself better for the stage? So how about we'll start with Andre.
Yeah, so in our case, we had to incorporate the company. This was the requirement. And to have all the proof of funds, all the documents. It's very important to have everything on time during application process for work permit.
Mm-hmm.
Because the sooner you get all the data, all the information, the sooner you get the visa. In
Mm-hmm.
our case, we landed in Toronto in the middle of April.
Mm-hmm.
Because the work permit process usually takes 2 weeks, but in our case, it took 1 month, even slightly more. So the sooner you get the documents, the better.
Excellent. Yeah. And for you, Sandesh? Actually, if you could also elaborate on the temporary work permit process and what it was like, because I think for you it was fairly recent. It was earlier this year. So just talk to us about what it was like for you. And also, is there anything that you think you could have done better up until that point?
I think the only mistake we were done before applying to the work permit was the share allocation. Like me and my co-founder, we had equal number of shares. I had 50, and even my co-founder had 50% of the company. But you have to know that, like I later on we got to know that it has to be more than 50%. So that took us additional time to change the share allocation to make it more than 50 for me. And that took a while. But other than that, I don't think I faced any issue because I was obviously working closely with Veronica. Veronica helped me in all possible way. And I got it within 2 weeks. Yeah.
Okay, excellent. Yes, that was processed within 2 weeks since we've actually submitted the entire package. And something that I wanted you guys to also chat about is the application of the work permit. I know that you have to also register at a separate portal, right? So there's an extra step there, and I don't think that people really think about. They just look at the PR application, but there's a lot to be done for you to get issued that work permit. So that's something I wanted to highlight. And if you guys have any comments, feel free to jump in. And I know that someone just asked, do we need to apply for the work permit before we know whether we are accepted? No, because you won't be able to. So the permanent resident application and the work permit application happen at the same time, because for both of these processes, you need to have a letter of commitment from us, right? So we will start both of these applications right away at the same time. It's just the work permit, in ideal case scenario, it's processed within 2 weeks once we have all the documents. So this way you can get here as fast as possible while the PR application is being processed. And another thing is, someone did mention, if there's some, if you are already in Canada, then you do not need the work permit application. So you can start working on the venture here, and we can skip the whole thing. And we had the case last year. It's actually make things a bit easier because you're already here, and all we do is applying for a permanent resident application. Okay, so and maybe a quick comment about finding living accommodations here, because I know that, Andre, for you guys, that was the first time ever in Toronto for you, and you didn't know anyone. So what was it like? How did you prepare for that whole, settling here? Yeah.
In general, it was our first time in North America. We decided to find apartment on Airbnb for 2 weeks. And during this time, we researched the real estate market, how much costs to rent in different neighborhoods. Toronto is very diverse. You can find different communities, and in our case, we found a person from Ukrainian community in Facebook, and she helped us. She helped us to find a person close to the next Canada office. So it was like 7 minutes from distance. Yeah.
Okay, great. Sandesh, anything to comment here?
Yeah, so for me, it was, yeah, I did like, first thing I want to tell you guys, warn you guys, Toronto is expensive on, on the stay side. So first month, just expect that there is huge cost attached for the learning. So keep aside a bigger chunk of funds for the first month, because you have to learn so many things and there's a cost attached to learning. I did Airbnb on the first month, and second month onwards, I figured out that during April, post-April, most of the students go on vacation. So there is an option for sublet. Okay, sublets are pretty cheap until you figure out many of the stuff. Sublets are pretty cheap. You can find out sublets, and there is a site called as Kijiji here. Site name is weird for the outside people, Kijiji. And also Facebook Marketplace. You can find many of the places on Facebook Marketplace as well. The best part is that all the sublets are within 1 kilometer radius of the next Canada headquarter. So you'll get pretty good accommodation space if you find out, like, yeah, find out in all this website.
Yeah.
So that's,
okay, excellent. Okay, so I just wanted to sum up in terms of having all your supporting documents ready. So as soon as you find out, everything should be ready to go, translated, notarized. There is a question from Ricardo about if you need to have diplomas and certificate recognized in Canada. No, you don't need to before start. There's no need for that, but you will have to, depending on the language that it's issued, you might have to translate it and notarize it. Just keep that in mind. And another question from Ricardo as well: will the startup visa cost be subtracted from the initial $25,000 of investment from Next Canada? And the answer is no. The investment is for your business, and we will be covering the startup visa costs from a different pool, essentially from a different budget line. So okay, so let's move on. And now that when you arrived here, and other than Sandesh, for you, I know it was the first time experiencing below zero temperatures. So was there any surprises or something that you feel like you were not ready, and you could have done something else to prepare yourself for arrival? Anything here to add?
yeah, it's a very good topic to discuss, first of all, because people will because I'm from a place where it's more of a, like, it's a coastal area where the weather is high, like pretty much high. So this was my first winter when it was almost like a winter, but people will ghost you here that winter is coming. So it is more like they just ghost you. But the thing is that it's just a mindset. Even recently I saw -15. It was pretty manageable. You just have to have the right clothes. That's it. So it's better to buy a jacket over there in your native country and come here and buy something much better than that.
And how about you, Andre? That was your first time in North America, right? So you just like came in here.
Yeah,
and
the good thing that the weather is similar to the weather in Ukraine, so that was fine. The only one thing that when we arrived on the day, in the middle of April, there was like a snowstorm with minus 20 degrees. So we were not like ready for this, but in general, everything was very warm. People were very supportive and helped us during our first days in Toronto.
And also wanted to ask you about the work permit. So once you are on the work permit here, just wanted to correct me if I'm wrong, but you're not allowed essentially to work anywhere else but to work on your startup here. So that work permit that you're getting under the startup visa stream is only for the purpose of your venture. So essentially, if you let's say at some point hopefully it never happens, but if you drop out of the program, you won't be able to work anywhere else. So is that correct?
Yeah, this is correct. So you get a closed work permit, and you can work only for your venture.
And how long did it take both of you to get approved to get approved for PR? How long was the entire process?
Back 2 years ago, in average, it would took 8 months, but in our case, it took 12 months because of the unique case. My founder, Natalia, is also my wife. So, but it took 12 months.
Yeah, and for you, Sandesh, the entire process from the submitted application and then approval landing here as a permanent resident?
It was just 3 months.
3 months.
So
Wow.
for me, it was 3 months because as I said, there was that name issue. But even there is one more person here, he got it within 2.5 months.
Okay.
So that was the fastest. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. And I wanted to ask you if you have any other final thoughts, advice, tips that you'd like to share with applicants.
My side, no, none, because everything is sorted. Like everything has pretty good, like everything is pretty much documented. Everything has a pretty, like even the visa process, the site itself is, the Canada immigration site itself is pretty detailed. And also, if you need anything, obviously Veronica is there. Like Veronica helped me throughout my application process, so it was smooth. So it's like from my side, there is nothing to add much.
Okay, and Andre?
Yes. So during the process, you will be guided what to do on each step. So it really helped us during our process. And the same, all the information on the Canada government site is very, everything is very clear and well described. Yeah, one thing that I would like to add, I know that one of the founders that were in Next AI 2018, he lived in multiple countries, so he had to collect police certificate from all countries. So you should also think about this preparing your documents, because it takes, in different countries, it takes different time to get the certificates.
Yes, that's correct. And another thing, since you briefly mentioned about your situation, I actually would like to highlight a few things here, because you and your spouse, Natalia. So essentially what happened is, and this is for some of you who is planning to have your spouse as a co-founder in your business, it's a little bit of a tricky, it's definitely doable, but also keeping in mind that Startup Visa is a fairly new program as well. So, and I think when Andre was going through it, it was the very first year for us. It was the second year or third year that Startup Visa was even offered. So there were still a few miscommunications and things that were happening. But one big takeaway is that if you are applying with your spouse, the spouse does not go as a dependent. The spouse is going to go through their own Startup Visa application, which was a tricky thing, because that's the only stream by the government that actually says that, you know, your spouse is not going to be kind of reviewed as a dependent, but they have to complete their entire separate application as a founder. Did I sum it up somewhat okay, Andre? Yeah, so and that caused the delay, because when we applied initially, the instructions were primary applicant will apply under Startup Visa, and the spouse will apply as a dependent. And this is an automatic process that happened for a few other teams as well. But in their case, their spouse was not a founder, so it was an easy process. But because for Andre, his spouse was also a founder, we'll just have to actually submit an extra paperwork down the road. So this is something to keep in mind, right? All right. Okay. So I would say, I think we are ready to for some questions, and I know we've been okay. So what English test is required? Is it specific one like IELTS or TOEFL? It is a specific test, so both of them, so IELTS and TOEFL are acceptable, but each one of them has pretty much an acceptance, the minimum level of that you need to to get in order for it to be acceptable. But all of this specific information can be found on the website as well. And I would say just for the specific requirements, just in case they are changing, I would always go first to the website and, you know, make sure that you have all of the information there. So in relation to the work permit PR status, what happens if we need to pivot or incorporate a new company? So essentially, so this is partly the reason why because the process is taking so long, the bar is a little bit higher. So we would essentially look at teams that already been working together or already are a little bit further along so that we can avoid pivots and situations like that. So once you are applying to the program and then you are going you are in the Next AI program, you'll have to work on this, on the business that you applied here with. So you won't be able to reincorporate a new company and then we'll start a new process, because because for 12 to 16 months, we all have to be, you know, on the same page with minimum movement and changes as minimum as possible. So that's a good question, actually. Okay, and I think, okay, share allocation. My partner and I are incorporated outside of Canada currently. Is this still valid? It's totally fine. We do have it, it's even in the application form. So how do we incorporate inside of Canada? So in order to be eligible for the startup visa and to get into our program, you will have to incorporate a new entity. And in terms of the step-by-step process, we will be guiding you through with our legal partner. Osler is a firm here in Toronto. So you'll be guided throughout this process, and we'll make sure that it's properly structured to meet the requirement of the immigration and also to meet the requirement of Next Canada. Okay, I think that these are all questions for now. And now one thing, I guess, anything from you, Andrea or Sandesh, to add, any burning thoughts, questions, words of wisdoms?
Yeah, I would say you as a startup founder, you should be persistent and dedicated for your idea, and you have to be passionate about what you do. It helps you along the way. Yeah.
And this process, I mean, it's really hard to start a business. Obviously, it's a risky endeavor, and it's not easy to immigrate. Like, those two processes are not easy. And I think that managing expectations, it's a very important aspect, because putting these two things together, it's going to be, you know, and it's going to take a while. And like I said, it's a life-changing opportunity. You're doing it, you know, it's a privilege to be in this country. So obviously, you want to hope for the best, but you have to be ready for all sorts of outcomes. And I think for me was, I have my fair share of scars, so it was important to be ready for, you know, for whatever comes. And I can share one of the cases that we've had when a person came in on the work permit, built the business, you know, launched the company here. They were pretty much one of the top performing businesses here. But then at the end of the cycle, when it was time for a decision on permanent residence, unfortunately, the PR was rejected because his founder, like I said, there's one rejection because his founder withdrew throughout the process. So it really was unfortunate, because we had to find out this entire thing at the end of the cycle, right? So even though you are here in Toronto, and yes, you're over the hump, but it's just the beginning of the journey. So it's really important to manage expectations, but also, you know, keep trying as well, because we do have applicants that apply from year over year over year. Okay, so, and I guess to wrap it up, I just wanted to highlight a few events that we have coming up. So we have tonight, actually, Founder Matching Meetup in Montreal. All of these events are on our website. On December 2nd, there will be application webinar. So there's also with an alumni panel where my colleagues will be discussing a little bit more in depth what the program looks like, the application, how to build a strong application. So it's going to be a bit more in depth. December 5th, Founder Matching Meetup in Toronto. And for any questions that you might have about the startup visa process or the program in general in Toronto, so feel free to reach out to me, but I will be sending some follow-up communication. And for Montreal related immigration process and information about the program there, you can contact info Montreal at nextai.com and visit the website. The website has a lot of information about the program, about the network. My suggestion to you, I'm happy to answer any of your questions. We do have a lot of requests specifically about startup visa, but my only ask is I'm happy to answer any of the questions and jump on the call, but I would really appreciate if you first take a look at the frequently asked questions, familiarize yourself with the program, and ask specific questions related to your case. So the more details I have, the more detailed response you'll get. So I guess that's something from me. And I think application deadline is January 6th. So we do have like about a month and a bit. And something to keep in mind is that the full application package contains 3 things. It's a team application, but also do not forget that founders also have to complete their individual profiles. There's also a video component, a video interview component that you'll have to complete. And all of these things have to be submitted to us by January 6th. Okay, are there any other questions that we have? Let me just quickly check. Okay, so I think for now we are good. I will also, if there are any case-specific questions, I do see I did not answer them. I just wanted to target something that the group would benefit from. So, but I do have a record of all the questions that's been asked. If there's any follow-up questions, you know how to contact me, and I'll be happy to answer them. And I think that's pretty much it. Okay, so thank you guys again so much for joining. This was our first webinar for international applicants. I really hope everybody found it helpful.